సమగ్రతను కాపాడతానని.
It has now been 512 days.
(2014). It was a year of thumping majorities and rebirths. A year upended by calamity and conflict, disease and division that often left the public and its leaders grasping for answers. Also a year of unexplained disappearances. Here, according to us, are the top 10 news items of the year. At number 10, the formation of Telangana. 2014 was a historic year for Telangana. The fruition of a long-cherished dream for the landlocked region. A separate statehood finally became a reality, ending decades of turbulent struggle for the region in united Andhra Pradesh and months of tumult in and outside Parliament, and an alleged TV blackout. The Lok Sabha finally approved the bill for formation of Telangana on February 18th this year. And on 2nd of June, Telangana became the country's 29th state, and Telangana Rashtra Samiti Chief K. Chandrasekhar Rao took over as its first Chief Minister. Number 9 had to do with coal and its mining. The coal block allocation scam continued to make news all of 2014. On 1st of September, the Supreme Court declared allocation of all coal blocks made since 1993 as illegal and arbitrary. The Apex Court cancelled allocation of 204 blocks and also directed the companies which were allocated blocks but had not operationalized them to pay a compensation to the government for the loss to the exchequer. The Supreme Court's decision has impacted big Indian corporations like Jindal Steel, SR Power, GVK and JSW Steel. In July 2014, the Supreme Court set up a special CBI court to try cases from the coal block allocation scam. And as the year ended, the investigations and questionings of former ministers and public servants continued. The Cabinet on 24th December approved an ordinance for holding auctions of coal blocks, as well as the rules for their e-auction, launching the process of allocation of 204 mines that were cancelled by the Supreme Court. The first lot of auctions are to be held in February next year. The government promulgated the Coal Mine Special Provisions Ordinance 2014 in October to facilitate coal block auctions. The eighth most important news came from Ukraine. The battle for power over Ukraine divided the country and polarized the world. About a month after a revolution in Ukraine's capital overthrew the government, the country's new leaders watched Russia claim a region for its own, wage an information war, and mass an estimated 40,000 troops at the border. All the while, pro-Russian protests bloomed in the eastern cities of Ukraine. The Russian military annexed Ukraine's Crimea Peninsula following a referendum in March and shut off natural gas pipelines across the country. Relations between Kiev and Kremlin had been strained since protesters forced Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych to flee the country. The Kremlin saw Yanukovych's ouster as a window of opportunity to invade Ukraine, sparking a yet unresolved armed conflict between the Ukrainian military and pro-Russian fighters inside Ukraine. Kiev's interim government now faces a possibility of invasion or civil war. Moscow remains cagey, denying the West's accusation that Russian President Vladimir Putin has provoked unrest, also refusing to acknowledge Kiev of any wrongdoing. The US and EU continue to threaten further sanctions that would hurt Russia's economy. At number 7 is the deadly Ebola virus. This was the year of the biggest documented Ebola outbreak of all time. It started in Guinea at the tail end of 2013, and the World Health Organization was made aware of it in March 2014, by which time Guinea had 86 cases. And there were suspected cases in neighboring Liberia and Sierra Leone. The virus spread steadily, claiming more and more lives until the WHO declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern on August 8th. People in affected communities were understandably fearful, some were distrustful of health workers and resisted going to treatment centers, where it may have seemed they were only going to die. There still is no cure for Ebola. While a few cases surfaced in USA and Europe, primarily amongst health workers returning to their countries, the spread outside Africa seems to have been contained. In West Africa, though, the outbreak is far from over, and it looks like Ebola will belong not just to 2014, but 2015 as well. There have been more than 7,000 deaths in the region so far, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The only source of encouragement came from Nigeria, where the outbreak was successfully contained. Out of 19 confirmed cases, 7 died, but 12 survived, giving the country an enviable fatality rate of 40%, much lower than 70% and higher elsewhere. At number 6 is the carnage in Gaza. On 8th of July 2014, Israel launched a military operation designated Operation Protective Edge in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. 7 weeks of Israeli bombardment, Palestinian rocket attacks and ground fighting killed more than 2,200 people, majority of them Gaza civilians. The aim of the Israeli operation was to stop rocket fire from Hamas-controlled Gaza into Israel. The Israeli crackdown on Hamas in the West Bank was launched following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers by Hamas members. On 17th of July, an Israeli ground invasion of Gaza began. The aim was to destroy the extensive tunnel system used by anti-Israel terror outfits to enter the country and carry out operations. Israel withdrew its ground forces on 5th of August after having destroyed the tunnels. On 26th of August, an open-ended ceasefire was announced. By this time, Israel reported that Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other militant groups had fired 4,564 rockets and mortars from Gaza into Israel, while the Israeli Defense Forces attacked 5,263 targets in Gaza. At least 34 known tunnels were destroyed, and 2/3 of Hamas's 10,000 rocket arsenal was used up or destroyed. Over 2,000 Gazans were killed, including 519 children, and around 11,000 wounded. 66 Israeli soldiers, 5 Israeli civilians, and 1 high civilian were killed, while 469 Israeli Defense Forces soldiers and 261 Israeli civilians were injured. The 5th spot goes to the unprecedented flooding of the Kashmir Valley. September 2014 witnessed the state of Jammu and Kashmir battle through one of the worst floods in over 60 years. It claimed 282 lives and damaged 2.53 lakh houses. Post-flood, rehabilitation efforts, or the lack of it, played a decisive role in the 2014 Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections. The 4th most important news of 2014 came from inside Pakistan. On 16th of December 2014, Peshawar turned into a city of tiny coffins and funerals as it mourned the killing of 142 people, 132 of them children. During an 8-hour rampage at the Army Public School in Peshawar, a team of 9 Taliban gunmen stormed through the corridors and assembly halls, firing at random and throwing grenades. The Taliban terrorists entered the Army Public School in Peshawar disguised in military uniform. In what is now called the single deadliest attack in Pakistan's history, it horrified a nation already weary of unending terror assaults. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan claimed responsibility for the attack, describing it as revenge for the Pakistan military's armed offensive in North Waziristan that started in the summer of 2014. The number 3 slot went to the other international terrorist group IS and its activities. In November 2014, the Sunni extremist jihadist rebel group, once known as the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, released a shocking propaganda video titled "Though the Unbelievers Despise It." It featured the apparent murder of an American hostage, Peter Kasich, and the mass killing of what appeared to be nearly 24 Syrian soldiers. The beheadings received wide coverage and was condemned all over the world. The publicized beheadings represent a small portion of a larger total of people killed following capture by ISIS. The group, now calling itself Islamic State, has succeeded in imposing itself as a key player in the complex Syrian equation in a relatively short time. In June, the group had proclaimed a worldwide caliphate, and it claims religious, political and military authority over all Muslims worldwide. In 2014, it claimed provinces and territories in Iraq, Syria, Sinai and eastern Libya. Number 2 slot on the news radar is a mystery. Termed as the biggest aviation mystery of the century, Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 mysteriously vanished mid-air while flying between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing. The incident occurred on 8th of March and the aircraft had 239 people on board. Despite an extensive international search and rescue operation, nothing was found that would indicate what happened to the ill-fated aircraft. It is still unknown why the flight suddenly turned off its communications, changed its course dramatically and flew low. And even as the Malaysian Airlines tragedy continued to occupy headlines across the globe, another airplane belonging to the same airlines, MH17, exploded mid-air and came down in flames, killing all passengers on board. On July 17th, while flying over Ukraine, MH17 was hit by a missile fired by a pro-Russian separatist group who possibly mistook the plane for a military transport aircraft. The incident was followed by much finger-pointing and posturing to apportion blame. The investigations still continue and forensic examination of the debris is being conducted by a team of international experts in the Netherlands. But for India and Indians anywhere in the world, 2014 undoubtedly belonged to just one man. Narendra Damodar Das Modi was the most important happening of the year. Elected Prime Minister of the world's biggest democracy, PM Modi won a thumping majority for his party in Parliament, the first time in 3 decades that a single party had won majority on its own in the Lok Sabha. If the first half of the year was all about winning India, the second half of the year was dominated by Modi winning over the world. And wherever he went, the Indian diaspora stumbled over each other to attend his public audiences. Throughout the year, the Modi factor dominated the minds and voting fingers of Indians across states and union territories. In almost each regional poll and by-poll, the BJP, flying the Modi banner and speaking the Modi mantra of development and nationalist pride, mopped up support in state assemblies. State after state changed colour as India voted saffron. And that is the biggest news of 2014.